This is reposted.
So I was doing some research on the quote I found today, and I'm not sure if the person that wrote this article saw the irony in it or not, but they spent a lot of time trying to figure out who said this first. The quote is, "There is no limit to the amount of good you can do if you don't care who gets the credit." I'd like to think the list of people that were on that list don't care if they get credit for saying this, but I think this applies. I think of it a lot in the entertainment industry is you have to deal with so many egos. Like you have an agent and they need to get credit. They need to like latch on because they have to make their 10% because they got you the meeting, or a director needs to be able to get credit. And I just think like so much more could get made if we could put our egos aside and just move forward towards a greater good.
Well, first of all, I feel like we got to decide who gets the credit here. Is it Harry Truman or Ronald Reagan who said this?
It was me.
Oh, okay. So
It
then I
was
guess it
me
doesn't matter.
first. Yeah. Actually, I think the article I found said a Jesuit priest said it
Oh,
for the first time in the 1800s.
I thought it was clearly pointing to Ronald Reagan, but nevertheless, and I think presidents are a great sort of an example in this because you think of two different presidents. You think of like Richard Nixon versus Gerald Ford. Richard Nixon was this politician who came from a small town and built himself up and was spying on people, and it was Watergate, versus Gerald Ford, who was the captain of his football team in Michigan. He was very popular. He was well liked. If you're confident in yourself, if you're confident in what you're doing, then you don't want the credit. So I think credit comes down to like how confident in the job you're doing or whatever you're doing.
I don't think it's that you don't want the credit. I think you're just confident in yourself and you know that you will get the credit. Like you think about football is a really good example. You think about quarterbacks who are famous for being amazing, and you rarely hear them talking about how great they're. Here's a great example. Tom Brady, in his time at New England, famously would always he would take less of a salary so the money could go to other players so he could be on a better team. I think that's a very good example of not needing the credit. He knew he was going to get it in other ways, and that made everyone else around him better.
Yeah, I think the Patriots are a great example. They had all sorts of players that were sort of no name in that defense, and the team got the credit. I feel like Bill Belichick got a lot of the credit, but you're right. I think the Patriots are a good example of that. But we've all been there. We all want credit at some point. We all want to get noticed for the job we're doing. I think that's like a human instinct.
No, I think it is, but I think it's just interesting or important to think about how you can probably get more done. Like I guess for good is kind of the example. So like say you want to help your neighbor, just help them. I feel like most people would be like, "Hey, guess what I did this weekend?" Or like want to before you do it, getting eyes on you, or saying, "We need to do this my way." Versus just starting to do stuff and go along with whatever is the easiest plan.
How will you ever get a raise if your boss doesn't know the work you're doing?
Well, if I would say that if you're not doing great work, then they're gonna know it. Like you don't have to go to your boss and be like, "Hey, look, I increased our margin by 8% on this last deal." I mean, people are gonna see it. It might not pay off in the short term being like, "Hey, I need to be rewarded immediately," but I think good cream rises to the top and people are going to know who's doing a good job.
I would really disagree with you on that because I feel like in the business setting, it really is nobody's looking out for you except for yourself. You have to document what you've done and the task that you've accomplished to be able to show, like, hey, I am worth this much. And sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes you do document, they're like, we don't care. And then you got to go to the next place, but you still have your documentation of what you've done. I really don't think in the world most people care about the work that you've actually done, except for yourself.
I mean, maybe it depends on what industry you're in. I mean, like, what does that look like for you? Once a quarter, you email your boss and you're like, here's the milestones I hit. How do you do
I
that?
mean, I'm in a union, so it doesn't really matter. But I've definitely, absolutely, when I've met with her and asked for a raise, I was like, okay, here's what I've done. Here's the body of work that I've done, and this is why I deserve it. So certainly, at points in my career, I have definitely brought a notepad and said, like, hey, here's what I've done. And by the way, for the record, I also do it with my wife. I mean, when I clean the house sometimes and she's away, I'll leave a broom or a mop or something out there. So she'll go like, oh, he cleaned the house. I mean, I think it's a normal human aspect to do stuff and want to get credit for
I agree with that, but she wouldn't be able to tell that you cleaned the house if there
it.
wasn't a
No,
broom in the middle of the room?
not all the time. No, no, she just like, my wife, like most people, right? We're so busy. We got 1,000 things going on. She's locked into her job, the kids, blah, blah. She would definitely she would just assume, oh, the house got cleaned. That's why I've done that. I'm the one that kind of cleans the house. And it's been weeks and she's never noticed it. I'm like, oh, she didn't even know that the house is clean.
Yeah, I mean, I guess because that gives you fuel to do it again, or what's
It just gets you, it's like anything in life, it just gets you some bonus points. Like you were saying with an agent, right? They get their cut of the slice because they got them that role. I I understand this point in theory. It does, in an altruistic world, if we all just work together. But I think the world fights to get that. We don't live in an altruistic world. You have to fight to get credit for the things that you do in this life.
yeah, well, I don't know if getting credit for cleaning the house is gonna promote you to do more good. I think it makes you feel good, but like the being able to like if you didn't spend the extra 10 seconds strategically placing the broom, maybe you could have emptied the dishwasher.
But my wife wouldn't have noticed that I cleaned. And when I say, hey, I want to go play golf tomorrow, she'd be like, oh, that guy does so much around the house. Of course he deserves to go play golf.
So maybe there's no limit to the amount of things you can do for yourself if you get credit.
Well, I'm just saying, like in life,
I
really,
agree with your concept. Like it feels good to get the credit, but to be able to do more, if you can put that aside, you can be more productive, I think.
yeah, I mean, once again, I totally believe that. Like in an altruistic world, yeah, if we all just pitched in, if we all picked up litter that we saw out there, if we all helped the elderly person across the street, if we all did all good things, the world would be a better place.
Yeah. And so maybe instead of 100% focusing on yourself, maybe one time at a time. I mean, I'm going to get off this and say, hey, Nicole, I just did a great show. So like I'm going to get praise for it and get credit or whatever. So it's not like I don't do that. It's just I think it's interesting to try what it would look like to not, or just think of the possibilities.
Yep. And I know those people and they're good people and they're successful people too. So I'm not saying it doesn't work to not take credit, but
Yeah.
I think in like the business field and sometimes in marriages, you got to get a little credit so that people know what you're doing.
Well, if you're keeping score in your marriage, please reach out. You can find us at Reposted Podcast, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I'm Andrew Keller for the cleaning Larry. Thanks for stopping by.